Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the School District of Waukesha's Board of Education Teaching and Learning Committee for Tuesday, January 7th, 2020. We will begin this evening. Stacy, has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
Thank you very much. Next item, do we have any citizens that would like to address the committee this evening? Okay, seeing none. Our next item under general business, Bright Lights, we have a presentation from East High School regarding social emotional learning, the curriculum, and also the connection with School Connect. So we have Ms. Rogers here and her team that will be presenting. Welcome to all of you.
Present. Alrighty. All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Welcome.
So before we begin, I'd like to introduce the two teachers I have with me tonight. So right next to me, I have Jessica Prokop. She's one of our alt-ed teachers over at East. And then I also have Sandy Lookatch, who is also an alt-ed teacher as well as one of our special education teachers over at East. So both of these teachers will present on their involvement with our implementation of our social emotional learning curriculum this year. So I'll begin with why we decided to implement social emotional learning at East this upcoming school year. I'm in my fourth year at East, and over the first 3 years being at East, it was definitely an obvious need that we needed to do something different to meet the needs of our students. A lot of our students do struggle with their social behavior, which results them into being referred to East. A lot of our students, of course, bring trauma with them over to East. And increasingly, over the last couple years, an increase of our referrals to East has been students with mental health needs. So we wanted to find a way that within our curriculum and within our school day, we could effectively address the social emotional needs of our students. So also we wanted to, and what we've been focusing on since I've been at East is just building and maintaining positive relationships among our staff and students, so they would, of course, want to come day after day and finish their high school diplomas over at East. And lastly, we actually put it as part of our theory of action this school year because we said if this is going to be something we're going to do, we're going to invest in, we wanted it to be a part of our theory of action for this year. So our second goal is around the relationship building relational capacity, as well as creating a school environment that promotes a sense of belonging, not just for our students, but for our staff and families, so that our students will leave us with the skills and resources necessary to thrive outside of the classroom and into our community. So that's why we felt it was a need for us to do the SEL at East this school year. After we made this decision last spring that we were going to bring in the SEL, we started our search of curriculum that was out there, and there is not a lot of options for curriculums to be taught at the secondary level. Most of them are geared towards elementary and middle. Not many are focused for high school. So I actually got a flyer in the mail from this company in regards to School Connect, and I researched and I looked into it. And it was designed for implementation for a variety of ways in high schools, but in particular, they had an implementation plan for alternative education, which caught my attention. So reached out to the reps, got sample lessons, and we looked through it. And I decided that I thought this would be a good fit for curriculum. So they also offered amazing professional development so that it's not here is this curriculum, go do it. So over the summer, Sandy was one of the teachers that joined me as well as our school social worker. We did travel to Reno, Nevada over the summer, and we went through the training, and it is a train the trainer model, so that Sandy is our lead SEL teachers. So Jessica, as well as the other teacher that does the senior advisory, which Jessica will talk about in a minute. Sandy is the lead teacher, and they meet weekly and they go through the lessons, and we make sure that they feel comfortable with the delivery and they understand the curriculum and the purpose. So it was a really good experience. It was one of the better PDs that I've attended. And I feel that really helped us with getting that buy-in and making sure that we were on board to truly implement this with our students this school year. So as I said, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, who will talk about how this is implemented at East.
So it is structured, as Tiara mentioned, through a senior advisory. Oh, it's an okay. So it is structured, as Tiara mentioned, through a senior advisory, which is daily for 30 minutes right before lunch. It is myself and Sandy and one other teacher, and we have the senior class split into 3 groups. And it's mixed programming, meaning that the way that Tiara had scheduled the students into the classes is that a lot of the students that we have in our regular classes, then we don't have them in our advisory and vice versa. So for example, the only students that I encountered during the regular school day are the GED Option 2 students. In my advisory class, I have credit and competency students. And the reason for that is to add that extra layer of that relational capacity and support for students, so they have an extra person in the building that they may not otherwise know. So through myself being able to meet and work with those other students, I've built a lot of positive relationships of kids I wouldn't otherwise know. So she did that on purpose, which is that great, an extra layer of that support. It is a graduation requirement, and it is an elective credit for the students. Mondays consist of sort of checking in for the week, getting the pulse of the week, how things are going. We do goal setting, and then just sort of having those conversations, setting the tone for the week for the students. And then Tuesday through Friday is when we deliver our SEL lessons. We do 2 lessons per week, and they consist of the types of instructional delivery that you would see in the regular classroom, as far as classroom discussions, turn-in talks, sometimes games, videos, things of that nature. There's always some real-life application that the students can take with them after the lesson to apply that in their life. So, and then after each module, which there's 3 of, there's a culminating activity. And then the next slide shows the 3 modules. So module 1 is, we're wrapping that up right now. And that is about a supportive learning community. So in this particular module, it was focusing on building a positive learning environment for the students, building relationships, technology, putting away technology, and understanding the importance of an education and relationships with peers, relationships with adults, etc. Module 2, developing self-awareness, self-management. That's going to be your mindset stuff, emotions, responsibility, identity, things of that nature. And then the 3rd module, building relationships and resolving conflicts. For that one, we'll be looking at empathy, exploring diversity, exploring gender role myths, bullying, gossip, problem solving, conflict resolution type stuff. So Sandy is going to then talk about some specific lessons that we have been looking at, and then hopefully some student videos if they work.
And the reason I picked this is because this happens to be a favorite lesson of the kids, and if we do get to hear, you will get to hear many kids say that digital zombies was their favorite lesson. So when they first come in, we have a bell ringer, and the bell ringer is typically a question that they have to reflect on and answer. So I gave you each the handout packets, and you'll see at the top it says bell ringer, what's a digital zombie? Can you think of a time you were hurt or offended by one? So we haven't discussed anything yet. This is them guessing what a digital zombie is. Then comes the instruction part, and we talk about what's a digital zombie? Well, it can be described as a person who's addicted to technology. Many of the kids start to think they might know one. Don't quite realize it. One who spends as much or more time looking at phones, computer screens, TV, and video games than interacting directly with each other. It was funny because they did accuse each other. It wasn't them. They knew that they weren't, but they all knew someone. Right. So we go back over then, after a little bit of instruction, we go back over the bell ringer, and now we go through the questions to make sure everybody is on board. Then if you go further on, there's a reflection application. So this is, again, them starting to personalize it. So here you're seeing how many minutes are you, so now you're going to start to identify really it's you. So decide how many minutes, hours of everyday use you would use for tech time. If you went on a digital diet, how hard would that be? For some of the kids, they know it'd be super easy because it turns out they're not on their phones all the time. Then we went to the next part of this lesson was this poem that I put in here called Look Up. And in essence, it's all about the fact that we are surrounded by people, but quite often we're so tuned out that we're like alone in a crowd. So this was a video, which you can see that I said it was a video, but my video wouldn't work. So I started to read it, got totally emotional during it, couldn't keep reading it. A kid came actually up, took the poem from me, continued to read. The entire room was just very quiet. Yes, it was very moving. So then the next part was they had to pick a passage that was moving to them. Well, now they're all looking at when did I start crying? They figured that was the moving part. But then I said, you guys have to find the part that you attach to, not that I attach to. So then that was good. They all found, and then they shared with partners. And then our group discussion was, this media we call social is anything but when we open our computers and it's our doors we shut. So then they had to, what do you think this means? Can you relate to this? Went on. Then the next part was, so you look up from your phone, shut down the display, take in your surroundings, make the most of today. And how would it change your life and others if we live by these words? And the kids really went with it and really and then they also said, it was some real self-discovery. It was very good. Then from there, they talked, I don't have that up there, we talked about the teenage brain and, how much you really can be connected to technology, what's healthy, how much, and really you shouldn't be on technology very much. So they found that out, and then they came up with, you might be a digital zombie if, and they kind of got up and did their own little skits, so to speak, and some of them were funny, and some of them it was very honest and very insightful. It was good. And then at the end, so this one was the humor, and they could also do the poem. And then quite often there's homework to take home, and it's check to see how much you're really on your stuff at home, and who else in your house is on technology, and how are you going to help them to not be a digital zombie. And so the lessons keep building off of these kinds of things. So it brings insight to themselves, and then they can take it out, use it not only in the school day, but in their lives.
Okay. So what we did is, because our students have many different things going on. A lot of these are seniors, so they work, or some of them are teen parents and things of that nature. So we had a hard time getting students to be able to come. So what we did was we created a video of some of our seniors sharing what's been their favorite lesson so far this semester, how it's impacted them, how they'll use it in their lives. So I did not, because he said it was on AirPlay.
Let's just try, we can try and bring the
Just
mic
try?
up through. Can you get the speakers to work on
So yes, I will.
your computer?
All right. Oh, I feel special. You guys are going
Well,
all
we'll
out for
do it
this
the
video.
old-fashioned way, I think.
Okay.
Okay, and what's your favorite
Here it is.
SEL lesson?
Oh, so
that
now it
we've done?
sounds like it, but it's still. Did I pause it? Let's see.
Growth mindset versus a fixed mindset.
Okay, and why did you like that
Well,
one?
it's working at least.
Because
All the way up.
it's just a good thing to think about, especially how you're thinking.
Barely coming
whether
through.
you
Can you get the
focused
speakers on your computer to work?
or whether what is it, a fixed mindset.
I think I have to. Do I need to unconnect from the
Yeah.
AirPlay?
To just know
You got the script for this, Sandy?
Okay, and how will that help you in life?
What's interesting though, because when I started
I know
things
some of
when how you
I
handle
took
it.
them into my office. I have
What
a
was
office
your
that we
favorite
have.
SEL
I think he's
lesson
just a
we've
little
done so
louder.
far?
And
My
when I
favorite
come
SEL
back in the
lesson
room,
would probably
kids
have to
were
be
like,
digital
I'll go
zombies.
next, I'll go next. And so it was very exciting.
I think
because
his is a
thought it
little
was gonna be
louder. They
like,
should be
oh,
able to hear
teachers
his.
to talk. No, they all wanted to.
Because I don't know how to
stop
pull up
at
the
6.
microphone if it's not. So I know Raul's is a little louder.
Yeah, his,
Okay.
this is, the first one is the quietest one.
Okay, so we'll see if we can hear this one.
My name is Raul Perez.
And what was your favorite SEL lesson we've done so far?
My favorite SEL lesson would probably have to be digital zombies
And why did you like that lesson?
because it shows a good perspective about what others see that you don't realize, that everybody's always connected to their phones.
Okay, and how do you see yourself using this knowledge now in your life?
I see myself using it when I'm at work or if I'm at home to stay off my electronics because it really consumes majority of the time that you don't realize. So it encourages me to go hang out with friends or do other things that I can better myself on.
What's your name?
Ramon,
And Ramon, what was your favorite SEL lesson so far?
my favorite SEL lesson was Digital Zombies.
And why did you like that lesson?
I like that lesson because it showed me and it like opened up a lot of stuff about like how you can be a digital zombie, and sometimes you don't even know you being a digital zombie when you is because you're so used to doing like certain stuff.
What is a digital zombie?
Someone who's like someone who can't communicate with somebody or can't hold a conversation, or someone who's always on their phone and not worry about what's going on in real life or what's going on right in front of them. Or you can be talking to somebody and they won't even hear you because they're on their phone. They too much of a digital zombie.
Okay, and how are you going to use your new information outside in the real world?
Because you know not to be a digital zombie because there's a lot of stuff going around, like a lot of stuff going on around you, and it shows you that you just need to be aware, and being a digital zombie will put you, like, back you up a few steps and you always be behind if you like a digital zombie.
Okay. What's your name?
Maya.
And Maya, what was your favorite SEL lesson so far?
My favorite lesson was Digital Zombie
And why did you like the digital zombies lesson?
because that teaches, it shows you, or you can see yourself how you're ignoring your surroundings and people and at school.
Okay. And how are you going to use the skills you learned about that in your outside of school, in your real life?
Well, I'll be able to see my surroundings and not be a digital zombie and on my phone or, with a bad face and stuff.
What's your name?
Lucia,
And Lucia, what has been your favorite SEL lesson so far?
First Impressions.
And why was First Impressions your favorite lesson?
Because it taught me how to, sorry, I can't talk. If I were to get a job at an interview, if I looked like rough, like if I'm not wearing the correct clothing, then they'll think of me a different way. Or if I don't talk the right way, then they'll think I'm not right for the job. And I won't, like if I'm disrespectful, they won't think I'm right for the job, and a bunch of things, like it all adds up.
Okay. So those are ways that you would use it outside of school. How do first impressions matter in school?
Well, your teachers might think of you the same way as your employer would. Like they might think that you would slack and like not do anything if you look a certain way or if you talk a certain way. So they might, you're just gonna be like a bad kid.
What's your name?
Lamisha,
And Lamisha, what's been your favorite SEL lesson so far?
digital zombie lesson.
Okay. And why did you like the digital zombie lesson?
Because it taught me about how to put my phone down and yeah.
Okay. What is a digital zombie?
A digital zombie is someone that's always in their phone and not paying attention to what's going on.
Okay. And why does being a digital zombie affect your schooling?
Being a digital zombie affects your schooling because you can miss out on what you're learning in class.
Okay. And how would it affect your life outside of school?
Because you need to pay attention to your surroundings and you can miss out on life.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So that was to wrap up our lesson. Our presentation. to wrap up our presentation tonight. So if there are any questions about the curriculum or implementation this school year, we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Mr. Baumgart.
Yes, very interesting. Back to your favorite, digital zombies. How will you sustain that? We all have these programs we've attended and a big deal for a week or two and then it kind of peters out. So what?
The kids are more than happy to call each other out if someone is like on their Chromebook too much, or I've heard kids in the hallway even because we've got the yonder pouches, so the phones are locked up during the class, but then they can be back out in the hallway. And I have heard kids who have been like trying to talk to someone and they're like, "You're a digital zombie." So we will continue to build on this with more lessons, but the bottom line is kids are calling each other out on it now too.
It's great because I'm probably got some people in my family, not in my household, but nearby.
Have them read the poem.
That's good. Thank you.
And beyond the digital zombies lesson, with the other lessons, we do loop it. I mean, we bring them up a lot, not only in the advisory, but in class and even in the hallways and whatever the case may be. Hey, remember that one lesson we had on XYZ? And we will have those conversations. So it's not a one and done lesson that we just had one random Tuesday and then we never talk about it again.
Great.
We definitely, those of us who implement the lessons and then who work with the seniors in those classes. And the nice thing about the fact that we're all doing the same thing is that I can talk about those lessons with my GED Option 2 students, even though I'm not their advisory teacher, I will bring those up in class. And that's a nice way of that reinforcement.
Very much.
When the first young man that we didn't hear, his was not digital zombies. It was about mindsets and growth mindset versus fixed mindset. So they're picking up, like everyone's got their favorites and they're all picking up different things.
We're getting make sure for the back room, are your mics on? Okay.
Talking to him.
Mr. O'Brien.
So, not to overfocus on digital zombie. She mentioned first impressions, and you guys mentioned 2 or 3 others. So, is each topic a week? Is it threaded? How many different topics are covered under this social emotional learning curriculum?
There's 60 lessons.
60 lessons altogether. Okay.
Yeah, 20 per module, so, yeah. So yeah, they are threaded too, because we do reinforce them, and the curriculum itself will reinforce them within the lessons. It builds on itself too.
Okay. Mr. Coleman.
Want a new phone, Sandy? I was just wondering, this lesson that you gave as an example, you could apply it in school and you could apply it out of school. Are all the lessons that way, or just some?
No, they all are. Which is why so many of them, the homework is quite often go home and now talk to your family about this. Or it might be if you have a job, go to your job and, present this to your boss, to your colleagues, to, whatever. So it's not just school skills. It is skills for life.
Okay. And have you seen as the years gone on, as the year has gone on, that they come back with maybe better examples, or they're interacting a lot more with their family or their employer, or are they kind of, have you seen growth, I guess, in examples of things bringing back from those places outside of school?
It depends on the kid.
Yeah.
It depends on the kid, but I have seen, even to the point of them applying and, like I said, calling each other out for different things, to me, then they're internalizing these skills.
Right.
And so if I can remember that being on my phone all the time, digital zombie, and then weeks later, I'm now accusing you of being a digital zombie because you're on, it means I took something out of that lesson and it's bothering me, and I'm going to let you know. and that's communication. And
Sure,
We
sure.
have discussed some of the lessons, such as, again, the first impressions lesson, when they have gone out and done job interviews. Being an alternative school, working with our students, that's something that we do, is we help them with job skills and employability skills, and we have those conversations about real life stuff. And so we have talked about, again, that first impressions one, growth mindset as far as being on the job, and not getting mad and quitting on the second day. So we have seen the application carry over, yes.
Good, good. Well, you guys are excited about this too, so that translates into, more excitement with the students. So thank you.
Anyone else? Could you answer a question that I have? Have you been impressed by certain things, maybe above and beyond of what your expectations were after the training that you had? Is there anything that really stands out in that area?
okay, so when we were trained, it's obviously all adults and we're all excited and so I thought,
Right.
okay, but this is good here. Now it's there.
Sometimes.
Right, exactly. But actually, it's translated.
Nice.
The kids are, and this was a bit of a stretch because adding this was like something more, and we're not always excited about adding something more. But now it's, are we doing advisory today? It's just, they're very engaged in it, they're very used to it, it's part of their day. And when we don't have it, it's like, oh, we're not having it?
And one thing I will say with the students, I was worried about the time of day that I put it, because it is when most of our seniors dismiss, so their final academic class is at 11, and then this goes into 11:30. So I was nervous, would kids just walk out? I don't want to do this. It really, it's not helping me. I don't care if I get the credit for it. So the fact that they stay and they look forward, and as they said, if we're doing an adjusted schedule, they're like, but are we still having advisory at 11? So just to
Great.
see the seniors buying in, and definitely some buy in more than others, but collectively they've been doing really well. So when I pop in and I look to see what's going on, they are engaged, and they are, one time I was in Sandy's, they, will ask me questions where I'm like, oh, I'm invisible, I'm in the background, but they'll bring me in a lesson. Has this ever happened to you? So I've been very happy with the buy-in from the students, and then and ultimately, because I did select the teachers who are going to be doing it, because I wanted it to roll out well, and they've done an amazing job rolling it out, and that's why I feel the students are buying in the way they are.
Okay, anything else?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very informative. Really appreciate your time.
I'll just leave. Oh, it's fine.
Next on the agenda this evening, we have our two action items. The first one is the approval of the Teaching and Learning Committee minute from our meeting on December 3rd. Going to be looking for...
Mr. Dietz.
There we go. Yes.
I noticed very minor corrections, just
Sure.
spelling of a last name. Under opportunity for citizens to speak, Reese is misspelled.
Okay.
Other than that,
We will take care of that. Thank you, Amanda, for catching that.
and then I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, sounds good. As amended. Okay,
As
sounds
amended.
good.
Second.
We have a motion and second for approval of the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting minutes from December 3rd. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Abstain, please.
Oh, you were gone.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Motion passes 4 and 1 is abstention. Okay. Next this evening on the next action item is the approval of the overnight field trip requests. We do have some for the remainder of this school year and also some for the 2020-2021 school year listed.
I can just add here, Mr. Dietz, I mean, nothing,
Sure.
certainly pretty standard compared to last month and some of the international trips we talked about. So again, most of these are clubs or athletic related. South with the Invitational in Cedar Rapids. North Ice Fishing Tournament in Eagle River. I like that one. Boys Baseball State Tournament. Those are pretty standard. The 2021 requests have cheerleading nationals happening in Orlando this year. Just to reiterate, the Butler Middle School is a post-8th grade trip. So you guys are familiar with that. And then the global travel with South through Washington, D.C., the New York City.
Sure.
So.
Good. Thank you. Mr. Baumgart.
Just one comment I have. I'm going to approve of it, but again, we've had one comment at a very late minute, less than a month before the trip to Iowa. And Stacy knows that upsets me a real lot. No, but it's a little inappropriate for them to wait till the last minute to send in something like this when they're going to be going out of the state. So I'm just asking that they be encouraged to get them in a reasonable amount of time.
We will reiterate that to Coach Carlson.
You can do that. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? We're looking for a motion.
I move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan.
Second it.
And we have a second.
I second, yeah.
Yep. Second, Mr. Baumgart. Any further discussion?
A question.
Yes, Ms. Roddy.
On all of them, there's listed the head chaperones and additional chaperones, and then there's the various lists of names. Are these all staff members, or are these parent volunteers, or a mixture?
Without checking each one of them, I can't say for sure, but every coach that receives an approved trip message from me after this meeting will be reminded of the volunteer policy, and so anyone who is not a staff member would need to be a parent, otherwise they can't go. It's staff members and parents.
Parents of those students that are participating.
Yes. And there's a whole policy about that. They receive that from me. They receive a reminder about it. They also have to meet there's a release form, there's a volunteer driver form, there's all kinds of things that they get from us to make sure that they meet all of our policy requirements. I would say in this stack of 6 trips, I believe they're all staff members, but I'm not looking at them.
No, that's fine, because there's some names that I recognize. I'm like, do I recognize them because they're employees? Do I know them because they're parents? And it was just a curiosity question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. We're going to be voting on approval of the 2019, 2020, 2020, 2021 field trip request as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Stacy 5-0. Thank you. Next this evening, we have 2 informational items. The first one is school-based mental health and social emotional learning update. We have Luke Pinion here this evening to lead us off, as well as a team that he has with us tonight as well. Luke is the Director of Student Services, so we'll start off with him. Welcome back, Luke, and welcome to your team.
Good evening, board members. Very excited to be here to speak to you about one of my most passionate areas in this role here. And I brought with me some of our best staff through Student Services. I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Heidi Edwards. I'm elementary school counselor for half of the elementary schools.
I'm Amanda DeSua, elementary school counselor for the other half of the elementary schools.
Hello, I'm Angie Krieger. I'm the school social worker at Horny Middle School.
So I just want to give the caveat to this presentation that this is by no means an exhaustive list of all the work that we do around mental health in the school district. There are pockets of great work happening in all of our schools. This is just some of the growth and development that we're driving out of district office. So we first ask ourselves the question of why school-based services. This is not a mandate from the Department of Public Instruction. This is not something we have to be doing, but we know it's the right work and it's needed work. We know 1 out of 5 students has a diagnosable mental health disorder, and we know that 70–80% of those go untreated. So we know there's a serious issue of mental health that is going unmet in terms of the needs around that. And we want to improve that well-being of students around their mental health concerns and enhance these environments in our schools for all students, which we know then will in turn increase test scores as well, right? When we're able to regulate better, that is a precursor to doing well academically. As well as all these other things that we have in here in terms of bullet points. It's a national, it's a local trend. It helps increase access and reduce barriers to mental health treatment when you offer different services throughout the schools. It's in line with the Department of Public Instruction's school mental health framework. And it's also, and when we talk about having mental health providers in our school, it's also an issue of our own capacity in terms of what our psych, social workers, and counselors are doing. And this isn't replacing that, but it's in terms of the capacity to deliver weekly psychotherapy to students is not something that student services does. So this is another reason why we partner with agencies to do that. I want to give you a little snapshot of the growth that we've had. So this is my 3rd year in the school district. When I was starting, we were onboarding our 2nd school with an active community mental health partnership. In other words, through that PATH program, providing access to healing, where we position family service therapists in our schools. Going into this year, we have 16 schools now with that partnership. So we've had a lot of growth in this area. It's very exciting. I just give you a snapshot here. Whittier, it has about 20 seats, meaning 20 students can be serviced, or that's their capacity with family service. Horning has about 12 right now, which Angie will talk about in a minute. Banting is at 8, they're in year 3. And then year 2 for Bethesda, Hawthorne, Higher, Lowell, and Prairie. They were a part of the DPI School Mental Health Grant last year. Those schools are all under a strict billable model where we bill insurance and they go through the insurance for all of those services, much like you would if you were accessing a clinic outside of the school setting for any types of treatment. We also have different grants that come in through United Way as well as the state that afford us that therapist to operate in a larger capacity in terms of consulting with staff, going to team meetings, observing students. Those 3 schools that fall into those grants in terms of the United Way are South, Hadfield, and East. And you can see the year that they're participating in that. So again, lots of growth. The different funding sources and models kind of can make it a little bit confusing to understand sometimes, but we're really just leveraging every possible resource we have to grow this service for students and to create more access. The school mental health grant came out last year. We were one of, I think, 60 schools or 63 schools that were awarded it out of 180 some school districts last year. So it really validated the work that we were doing around PATH. This year, they doubled the budget, thankfully, and so all but 1 school that applied were able to get those funds through the state. And this year, the first year we were awarded just around $75,000. This year we were awarded $65,000. In a minute, I'll break down how we use those funds. The state grant is really focused on collaborating your school mental health providers, so these individuals are psych, social workers, and counselors, and increasing that collaboration with community mental health providers or licensed psychotherapists in the community, and having and bridging that gap that often exists between services outside of school and services in school. So that's a strong requirement of that grant. And again, last year we used the grant. Part of it went towards purchasing a 2nd step curriculum, which is an SEL curriculum for our elementary schools. We'll speak to that in a minute as well. The other large chunk of it went to family service to expand that partnership and get psychotherapists into 5 additional elementary schools. This year, we again expanded our partnership with family service, included another 5 elementary schools in the service, and we have a sustainability plan in terms of when these monies go away, how we'll continue this. And then we reserve $5,000 of the grant as well to further develop mental health training and awareness activities with our student services staff for special projects. And then we'll use the same funds for next year, split the same way. You can see here the schools that were a part of the grant last year and then a part of the grant this year, and the schools next year. This will complete all of our brick and mortar buildings at least. Will have this partnership to some degree starting next year. And it's, again, designed to enhance and further support the work that we do in student services, not to replace, not to replicate any services, but to provide additional. The scope of the partnership, the state grant is really clear in terms of what we can and what we can't do with these monies. So we've left it fairly open when we wrote our application for that mental health grant. And this is all that our therapists in our building under the state grant are allowed to do. They've been co-facilitating tier 2 groups with the psych or social worker or counselor in the building. They're helping parents navigate mental health resources. They're providing additional learning for family staff. They're doing case consultations with staff and student services. This might be at problem-solving team meetings. It might be informally. They're attending other team meetings, doing mental health awareness and advocacy within the building, and then often they'll do observations and universal support within classrooms. So because the grant is so limited when the state money is used, what we do is that scope of partnership exists in year one for the 5 schools that are under that grant. And the sustainability plan is then they've developed relationships in those schools. Teachers know the therapist. We've got a strong relationship now built. In years 2 and beyond, it transitions to that PATH program where then they're sitting down knee to knee with students for therapy and developing treatment plans, diagnosing and working on their goals in tandem with the school. So it's a really nice sustainability plan because that grant gives us a year to really get to know our therapists, get to know the agency, build up capacity for everyone, teachers and staff, and then transition into that, like I said, face-to-face therapy for subsequent years. And I think I wanted Angie, so I brought Angie here because she has been one of our PATH champions at Horning. Horning was our second school that came on, I believe. First we had Whittier and then Horning. So Horning is, I believe, in year, I had it on the beginning there, year 5. And if you could just kind of talk about how this work has affected you or what you see the benefit of it at Horning.
Sure. So the first year that had started there was 4 different slots. And since that time we increased to 8 and then we've increased to 12. And, you know, just as you had pointed out too, it's just when you think about all the behavioral concerns and all the mental health issues, you know, I feel like Student Services does a really good job in trying to recognize and work with students and try to, you know, try to meet their needs. But just the sheer volume, we can't. And then also just considering that the intensity of some of our families that we work with. And so that's why it's really been helpful to be able to have a resource to come right into our school. You know, I think that the one thing is that we've had a really good working relationship with Family Services. I actually belong to a suburban social work group, and we met about a month or so ago. And so this was one of the topics, was to talk about mental health services. And there still is a lot of school districts in the area that do not have mental health services, or else they have just recently started. And when we started talking about what Waukesha has to offer, people really looked at us like, this is a model of it because we've expanded so much and we have just this flexibility with you know, the relationship, the strong relationship that we have. The way that it's worked with us is that typically at the beginning of the school year, we'll look at, along with the Student Services team, what students would best benefit. And typically those slots have gone to the students that have the most barriers. So usually it's like with transportation. And then we contact the families, and pretty much all of our families have been just really supportive of having that service. A lot of them don't know that that's available. And then, like, my role is to actually go find a location where they can have, you know, private time together, so we have a space available for them. Then I also maintain the schedule, and then I meet with the social or the therapist every time that they come in, just to have that continuity of care with them as well. So the feedback that I've gotten from like the families, the therapists, and then as well as the students is that it's been real advantageous for them, and it's been a real benefit. And you can tell that there has been progress for a lot of these students in the classroom as well, you know, especially in terms of their behaviors, and I mean ultimately just that their mental health issues have been addressed. So it's just been just a great resource. I feel like, you know, at Waukesha we have so many wonderful relationships with community resources, but to have a resource that actually is within our school, I mean, that's just been huge for us.
Speaking of outcome measures, we do look at, you know, it's kind of a tricky thing to measure. Some of these are more time consuming than others, and certain grants carry certain requirements for measuring outcomes as well. But we treat it very sensitively, right? Because this is as if you were seeing a therapist in a private clinic. There's lots of things around HIPAA and confidentiality along with FERPA that we follow, but one of the main goals is increasing access, right? We know that because 70–80% of students go untreated with their mental health issues, we want to increase that access. So knowing that just 3 years ago we were onboarding our second school, I believe at that time Whittier had maybe 12 seats. We're right now at a point where we have roughly 75 seats in a district and they're almost all full. So it is a capacity issue, and it's sort of a give and take with family service. I work closely with their director in growing this, in making sure they have the capacity, with therapists and staffing to grow accordingly. We also measure, universal impact, of course, through our typical data, office discipline referrals, things like that. The United Way has specific measures that are listed there that they're looking for and that we assess for the schools that are under the United Way grant. And then the DPI is mostly concerned, again, about sheer numbers in terms of how many students are accessing this support. So the DPI really wants to know how many students did the school mental health provider see and collaborate with as a result of this partnership and grant, and how many students got into therapy and started seeing a therapist as a result of this grant.
So we've also recognized that helping the students is crucial, but in doing that, we need to make sure that the staff across the district is well trained on mental health and trauma-informed care. In 2018-19, last year, we were able to create and offer 6 30-minute presentations on trauma-informed care and help teachers across the district recognize what going through traumatic events does to children and their brains, and equip them with the resources needed to really meet all kids where they're at. In this year, 1920, we have 4 45-minute presentations more connected to mental health. We also started talking about social emotional learning in one of them, anxiety and depression, and then kind of celebrating and reflecting at the end of the year, and then moving towards needs for 2021. We recognize that, that oxygen mask analogy, if you're not taking care of yourself first, you can't really help others. So part of our training this year, we're including self-care into every presentation as well.
I'm going to speak to the parent engagement piece. Is something that I'm pretty passionate about, and I know a lot of us here represented tonight are. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we have been doing to try to get this important information into the hands of parents, again, to help increase that impact. So we provided 3 parent nights for mental health awareness last year. Those were led by one of our PATH providers, our licensed professional counselor. We also offer mental health navigation for parents at all schools, again, helping to break down those barriers to assist families in finding resources that they need within the community. Luke did a presentation and got some feedback at a special education family engagement night. We also have 2 parent family liaisons for our students with disabilities. They help work with parents to answer any questions. Myself, Amanda, and I, we have provided a resource table and information at parent-teacher conferences, some curriculum nights. We also do a parent newsletter that goes out once a month, connecting parents with information from our monthly lessons. And we just started this year Tip Tuesday for parents on our Facebook page that offers them tips on how to handle any technology concerns, academic or social issues within the home. And then Luke's going to speak about the documentary that we have coming up.
So more recently, one of our efforts is this screening of a trauma documentary. I have sent out an invitation today, and you'll be seeing this marketed, publicized a little bit more as we get closer to January 22nd. That's a partnership with Wisconsin Public Television, who created this documentary of Wisconsin students and their history of adverse childhood experiences and the impact that that has had on their learning and actual physical development of their brains. So we're really excited about that. This is sort of just a little plug for that right now. That'll be January 22nd. We have, again, speaks really to our community partnerships. I'm continually impressed and blown away by how active and how great and rich our community resources are in the city of Waukesha and how involved our partnerships are with. So we have over 10 different agencies that specialize in either mental health or supporting children and family wellness that will be at this event for resources. So there'll be a resource fair before the screening. We'll screen the 1-hour video. We'll have a half-hour discussion about the video for any questions, and then there'll be resource tables will be open on the way out of that screening as well. So another good opportunity for community engagement, community learning, as well as giving an outlet for all of our partners to further support our families and our students.
So getting into social emotional learning, which we heard about earlier this evening, more at the high school level. So we're going to speak a little more about elementary and middle. In 2018-19, we wrote a grant to get Second Step is a research-based social emotional learning curriculum that we use. Then in this year, 1920, we were able to fund middle school implementation of the Second Step curriculum. It's about 23 lessons broken down into 3 units. They have one on empathy, a little visual. All the classrooms have posters like that, but then they also talk about how to calm down, self-regulation, and problem solving. So we have that in all classrooms, K-8 this year. It directly relates to the Wisconsin Social Emotional Learning Competencies, which you can see the graphic up in the right corner that covers self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. We have all the curriculums linked there, but know that the Second Step lessons are really catered to unique learning styles. They're in English and in Spanish. They offer visual supports. They have a lot of music and cover topics ranging from respecting differences to how to handle being pushed down and how to be an attentive learner. We also, Heidi and I, make it into every classroom in all the classes K-5 once a month, covering a variety of topics from personal safety to bully prevention to coping skills and anger management. And then we like to end the year with a little self-discovery and career education. And as you heard earlier, East is piloting a high school SEL, and we really hope to continue to move forward to gather what they're learning and share that with other high schools in the district.
Amanda and Heidi have been great. We reshaped their scope and sequence of lessons, so they really take the month of September to build teacher capacity around this as well, because teachers deliver Second Step, and you know, some are more comfortable than others with it, so they take the month of December to really get into classrooms, build up teachers, help those that are struggling, model lessons, and really ensure that teachers feel supported in delivering this content that isn't always easy to deliver depending, you know, on your background. And then of course you heard about East, which is well timed, that they're piloting the high school curriculum, and we'll be keeping a close eye on that and seeing how that goes.
So there's a lot of data coming out supporting the teaching around social emotional learning. So I've got a study up there. Again, they looked at a case study analysis around social emotional learning from really 4K through high school, which again, it's great timing with East being here, just how important it is to teach these skills. You can see improved attitudes and behaviors, greater motivation to learn, a deeper commitment to school because, you know, we're focusing on those relationship skills and that helps kids feel connected. Increased time devoted to schoolwork because, again, we're being proactive instead of reactive with behaviors. Fewer negative behaviors, as you can see up there. And then learning how to manage emotions, reduced emotional distress. And you guys might like this piece at the end. For every $1 a school spends on SEL, it gets an $11 return on its investment. So well worth the investment. Finally, to supplement the Second Step curriculum, again, that we rolled that out 4K through middle school. So we have that universal piece, that strong universal piece. But some schools are supplementing too with other curriculums like zones of regulation, which teaches kids skills to regulate emotions. The NED character education program, Tribes, which works on building relationships within the community. We use Act Now from Children's Hospital, which really targets bullying behavior. And then the AVID strategies that are rolling out in a lot of the schools as well.
So that's all we have about mental health in the school district and social emotional learning, but we'd love to hear what questions you have.
That's good. Mr. Baumgart.
Yeah, I don't know, but a question and I got a comment. I don't know which to go first, so I'll go with the question, I guess. As you went through that, we got to see how it's grown. And one of the questions I have, are you going to be able to get all of those outsiders, you know, that come in to do the work with you? You're at about 75
seats. So we
now?
have a handful of therapists that are staffed through family service. And of course, they're not district employees, right? So we have this back and forth. They put some strong language in their agreements that they're really signing up for the whole school year, right? Because we want that continuity of care. When therapists leave, it can really disrupt that student's therapy and treatment. But that's where I work really closely with their director, because we have to make sure that A, we have the readiness in our buildings and the needs identified, and that B, they have the staffing available and that they can draw from therapists in the area when they are posting positions. So far, we've been able to sustain that rapid growth, and we're almost, like I said, in the next year, we'll have some connection in every school. So I think
So that number is going to grow.
Yeah, and then the needs will grow, so we'll kind of take stock there. I think we have to remember, too, is that this is reserved really for Tier 3 intensive needs, right? We work at universal level through curriculum, SEL work. We have small groups that our student services run, and this is really something that is at that far end of the continuum for students with really significant needs that need this level of care, that we're saying, like, these barriers that are preventing you from accessing it outside of school, we want to eliminate that and offer you it here. So there will be a point where maybe, you know, we hit this threshold where we can't grow anymore, but we'll keep taking stock of that and keep working with families.
I mean, yeah, I'm not suggesting anything to slow down. Because the other thing that I was going to comment on, time and time again, I find things in this district that we have to be proud about. I mean, whether you go back to the AVIDs or whether you go back to the different charters we've got, you know, the things we have done. We just got a big accolade on Project Lead the Way and on AVID, as a matter of fact, at North High School. And now we got another one. I mean, when Angie, is it?
Mm-hmm.
When you shared that, you know, people are amazed at what we're doing here in Waukesha. I hope you are as proud of it. You're doing the work. I'm proud of it. I'm not doing the work. So thank you very much for the work you've done and what you're doing here and implementing this and seeing the very serious need that we have to do this. And you're right, it's going to help us academically when we get through this, as we go through this. Thank you.
Mr. O'Brien.
So I think Luke knows I'm a big fan of spending money on student services. And Waukesha has been known for a long, long time for being one of the top districts in the state when it comes to student services. And we had a little bit of a budgetary crunch as we transitioned. And it's nice to see that after we crunched down that we now are looking for ways to innovate and maybe reinvest. I don't see a reason why, you know, we're not on that other committee that worries about dollars. So I don't see a reason why we can't invest more, especially if it generates $11 every time you put it in a budget. Which I would have a hard time seeing those $11 show up.
We don't want to ask, we're not asking for proof, are we?
Yeah.
Give them to Darren.
But it does seem that we're under-resourced for what we've been able to accomplish and what we could accomplish. If we can continue with the partnership with our community partners, then it's only wise for us to continue to have the resources internally to make sure that partnership is strong and grows and benefits our students. Because, you know, if we're at the type of students we're dealing with, if we don't figure out how to reach those children and their parents and the families, we're not going to see the type of success that we have to have as Waukesha. And so I'm really excited about what you're doing. And I'll also say that, you know, a year ago at WASB, there was a big push from a lot of people that were pushing the mental health thing. And they got most of their stuff into the resolutions, and they're not there this year. But you could see what a shortfall they felt there was across the state in dealing with mental health and mental awareness and trauma for children. So I think your program is something that we should be trying to highlight at the state level, either at WASB next year, since it's kind of too late to do it this year. And that we should also show how much Waukesha is committed to it by, if at all possible, investing even more in the staff to build the program and make sure it serves our community. It's just a wonderful program. I think it's desperately needed. It's another way of addressing the needs of the community and growing the community to be a better place to live.
I'll thank the board too for their support, because this again isn't something that's mandated right from the top or from the state, so we appreciate having that support because we know how needed all of this work is.
Yeah.
Other comment, Mr. Como.
Thank you, Mr. Dietz. I'd like to just ask a question with respect to identification of the needs. You have outreach to families. I'm assuming teachers and staff will help identify. Can you give, and maybe there's some self-identification too, I don't know, what is that percentage breakdown of students just saying, hey, I need help, to staff identifying versus families saying, we need help?
I don't know if I could answer about the percentage, but just kind of in our ongoing contact with families when things come up, like for instance, I do meetings for truancy. And so not only are we just talking about the attendance, but we're also talking about the whole student, we're talking about the family, and just looking at what sorts of resources that we have available at school as well as beyond. And so it's a matter of if it appears that it might be to their benefit, just based on kind of what they're saying, then I would make that recommendation. It's hard because to advertise too much, because we have kind of limited seats too.
Yeah.
So, and we have had, not so much right now, but I know in the past we have had students that have been on wait lists and that sort of thing as well. But I think just a lot of it is just having the relationships that we do with the families and just the conversations that we have and just knowing them. And obviously for some people, it's fine for them to go outside of the school district and access those resources, but then others, it's a challenge. And so, but I think just knowing families, that's how we kind of are able to, determine what's appropriate.
Sure. How long do the services last for a typical student? Is it the entire year, or is it a semester? Or?
No,
okay.
It usually is. I mean, right now I have one student that is seen every other week. However, this is his second year. And we talked to the family, and they were in support of that as well. Because ultimately therapy isn't supposed to be forever. That's why they have treatment plans. So the therapist is having contact with the families to talk about these are what the goals and where are we at in achieving those goals. And then it's also helpful too, as student services, to have, like I said, maintain that contact with them as well, to be able to say, you know what, things are really going very well at school, based on what we're talking about with the families. We also have other students that might need to be seen. Maybe now is a good time to start transitioning. But again, that comes from, having the good relationships that we do with the therapist.
Sure.
Because it's critical that we have, those relationships.
Sure. As you've been building those relationships with the path partners, would that be a good way to call them? What have been some of the pleasant surprises, perhaps, that you've run across? And maybe what are some of the challenges that you have as you're trying to build those relationships?
Well, for me, the challenges have been when the therapists have left. It's kind of like with anything else. So that has happened, and so it's because you don't necessarily want to have students not having those services, So therefore, we've had contact with the family, and they understand that there is going to be a therapist that will be hired. And Family Services has actually done a really good job with that as well. If need be, they've had therapists that come in and kind of substitute for a period of time.
Any pleasant surprises as you've been building?
Yes. There's been a number of students that I noticed that their attendance has improved because, like I said, that is kind of one of the populations that I work quite a bit with. And because they're looking forward to the therapy, this is something that they really value. And just overall, like I've seen it before with improved grades, with improved, behaviors, better relationships with peers.
Switching topics just a little bit, what percentage of students experience trauma in their life?
There's a map you can pull up that actually categorizes the counties in Wisconsin and the prevalence of adverse childhood experience. I think it's linked to the DPI site, but it's definitely higher in Milwaukee. There's some northern counties that have a pretty high percentage, and I think the higher ones are at around 20% of students.
Do we know what it is for our district?
The map, and it's a little dated, but I remember Waukesha not being as high as neighboring counties.
Fair enough.
I can email
Fair
it
enough.
to you.
Yeah, if when you have a spare moment,
Yes.
3 months from now, that's okay. You're busy,
right.
so don't make it your top priority. But I just wanted to have a little bit of perspective on that. Because I don't.
And there was a study too that was done, it's called an ACEs study that looked at the impact of trauma. And I believe they found that about 6 people out of 10 have experienced at least one on a scale of how many?
10 adverse childhood
10.
experiences.
And so 6 people out of 10, which if you look at a classroom of, let's say, 30 people, you've got, a few students in there who have been impacted. So again, that kind of gives you an idea of the prevalence.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the hard work and you teaching us about what you do on a regular basis. So thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Bryan?
I just want to say that 1 to 11 is a good number to use. We'll never get that number out of school resource officers.
Good.
Student service.
I'm glad you remembered that one.
It's such that we do need school resource officers in our schools, and that's unfortunate. But I don't think we need to increase that resource. I think we need to increase resources of people like you, and that will pay much greater benefits in making our school environment safer, better, and building stronger communities than adding armed police officers to our schools.
Yeah.
Even though we need them, we do need them. But
And I think that's really where you get that return, is the impact not only in our schools, but in our communities when we're
Right.
teaching kids and parents how to manage emotions, how to build healthy relationships. I mean, I think all those are really key to, again, impacting the bigger picture.
Anything else? Ms. Roddy?
I remembered my questions. I went blank for a minute. Sorry. Families are meeting with these therapists as well as the student?
Sometimes they do, yes.
Sometimes? Okay, depending on the case?
Yeah, technically, their first meeting, their intake is supposed to have the family member present to help
Right.
develop that initial treatment plan and inform the diagnoses.
And then you said you would find locations to meet so that the privacy is kept. So are these meetings during school hours or after school hours, or it depends?
They're during the school hour.
During the school hours?
Yeah, or during the
Okay.
school, yeah. And that's been a really advantage, because otherwise, oftentimes students are seeing therapists during the day, and so then they're pulled out for even a longer period of time, and they may come back to school, they may not. So therefore, it's like, 50 minutes, that's their day. That's all they, because otherwise they can just continue to go into their classes.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Cook?
Just so the committee knows, there was a mention earlier that there was a budgetary issue a number of years ago where elementary counselors were cut. In the past 5 years, we've added 10 additional student services staff, so that now all of our elementary schools are covered with a student services professional, and we've increased that staffing at the secondary level. So we do have that level of what they were referring to as that tier 2 support, where we've got a staff member in place to provide supports at our school. The budget in our district, the flexibility that we've had in student services has allowed that, so we do appreciate that.
Anything else? Awesome work and really good overview. This could have easily been a Bright Lights, so thank you very much for all your behind-the-scenes work. You're doing a great job. Thank you so much.
They'll be at WASB if the proposal's accepted, so they'll mark their calendars.
Put a proposal in?
Great suggestion for
It is a good
next
idea.
year.
Yeah, I mean, across the state, they're all worried about this, and we seem to have something that works. So.
Right, so go for it. Very good. Our next informational item this evening relates to 4K through 8th grade general education curriculum overview. And we have 3 of our district staff here presenting tonight. Melissa Yao, Director of Elementary Learning. We have Dee Garcia, Director of Multilingual and Global Education. And we also have Dan Kieser, Director of Secondary Learning. They're going to be talking about the overview of curricular framework, current state at each grade level, the timeframes, and also give us an update on progress and what's to come in the future. So welcome to all 3 of you, and thank you for being here this evening.
So just a quick addition, we really heard from a high-capacity team just now, and I just want to reiterate publicly and say this publicly that these are 3 high-capacity directors sitting in front of you, and we talk about budget reductions. We are going into our 2nd year of not having any type of content curriculum coordinators in this district, and I've been in this district for 17 years, and so we had them when I came here. So what they're presenting to you, we're really proud of in terms of where we've come. So we do want to give you an overview of the current state. I want to keep in mind that these 3 represent the work without those coordinators, and so they'll take you through an overview. I appreciate Amanda Roddy bringing this up, that wanting to hear this as an information item. And I also want to say, if you find value in the format that this is presented tonight, we're really thinking about how we can make this sort of a handy little pamphlet, if you will, in some way, and make it more public. So I would value your input around that, certainly offline or after the presentation as well. So.
All right. So got to start off where the magic happens in 4K, setting that foundation for the work that goes all the way through years. And so in our 4K program, they have time for building their math skills, their literacy skills, and then social emotional time. You see a range in the minutes for math and literacy because we have half-day programs as well as full-day programs. So it does vary on what that time looks like. More of it looks like they'll have the essential lessons and practice. You will see deeper practice, of course, in a full-day program because of the timing and being able to get more. As we build up into kindergarten through 5th grade, you will see that we have math, and then literacy is a big umbrella, and under literacy you have reading, writing, word work, grammar, specifically. And so we broke down what all of those minutes look like. And then we have science and social studies. We do not have science social studies standards in 4K, but we do once they begin at time beginning there. And then once again, second step across the board, that is universal. We have intentional minutes that we have with second step universal curriculum. So that's not all encompassing of all the social emotional, but that is the instructional guarantee with our second step program that happens kindergarten. And as you heard from our team earlier, it started this year in 4K.
Once students transition up into middle school, they transition into...
Can you go back to that slide a second, if you don't mind? Excuse me. So when we look at those instructional minutes, and I think Jody can also help with this a little bit, or maybe they have the answer. Has there been a shift? I mean, you look at the dominance of reading, writing, grammar, language, and instructional minutes. I mean, you're up to 140 minutes dedicated to that sector. But then science and social studies is 40 to 60. And yet science and social studies also includes reading and comprehension and things like that. In the past, did we not have more science and social studies? Have we gone to more focus on these language art skills and not have as much focus on delivering that through the other curriculum?
Try to integrate as much as we can through reading and what the context will be, and we'll get to some of that later as we talk about some of the different genres that students are exposed to and the content of what they're reading. It's not just skills in reading, so we want to integrate as well as have specific time where you're honing in just on a curricular area as well. These minutes have been consistent over about the last 5 years, with the exception of adding in the intentional time for our social emotional second step.
Because, my concern is, not that we shouldn't do this, especially for those students that struggle, but let's say if you're a very good reader by the time you're in third grade, right? And we have choice as they get into the other grade levels, but if you're focusing so much energy into reading, writing, word, and work grammar on a student that where it's mostly review for him instead of advancement, then he's not getting the wealth of other opportunities at that fourth and fifth grade level. That could. I'm sorry, I'll speak into the microphone. Thanks, Ben. Speak into the microphone. But anyway, so we need that concept within the grade levels to make sure we got that covered.
And the way that that we teach the workshop approach gives us that there's explicit instruction time. There's times that students are working in groups, maybe doing research, doing inquiry through that. So,
Melissa, may I interject just so that I'm understanding based off of Mr. O'Brien's question. So those, he was asking for the 4K to 5. These are the early formative years for building their base for the rest of their learning. But with our learning continuums, if a child is advanced, say, in reading, they're doing the 70 minutes of reading, but it could be at a more advanced level based off of their own learning level, correct? Correct. Okay, so there you go, Mr. O'Brien. They have continuums that they can do 70 minutes at their own level. I just want to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Bet you they'd like more social science than science, so.
They can pick up a book about science then.
So as students transition up into the middle school level, they transition into moving between not just their teacher that they have for the majority of the day and specials, but across all their different content teachers. So the breakdown for our 6th through 8th grade, we put down the periods that are dedicated for each of the content areas. While we teach the same workshop format and model all the way through 8th grade, which we'll talk about a little bit, I compacted it all under literacy. So we still do the language work, the reading, and the writing. And that's why you notice as you read across, there's a period dedicated to each of the 4 areas, with the exception of literacy, where it's a double block in 6th and 7th grade. In 8th grade, a while back when 8th grade was experimented to be more of a pre-high school, they dropped it down to 1 period for each of the days, and tried to match up the literacy content topics and knowledge with social studies into a humanities. And but it is still in literacy, they're focusing on those literacy skills, and social studies, they're focusing on learning about the different domains of social studies and history and sciences. We had also, as part of 6th through 12th grade academic and career planning, or ACP, that DPI had passed. And so with the addition of Second Step, the team that spoke just prior to us met with our team for academic and career planning, and we were able to blend those topics together. We found that there was some overlap in topics, so we were able to develop a year-long calendar that we worked on and provided to each of the middle schools, so that Second Step and academic and career planning can both coexist. And so with our time that we have at the middle level, it knows that it has it as it weekly, because there are also times where this time is used for homeroom, advisory, and other pieces at the middle level.
So there's an intervention program, right, in the middle schools for struggling students. So is that a separate period in addition to what you see up here for those?
Correct.
Okay.
So when we have interventions at the secondary level, the kind of double-edged sword around the interventions is, where do you take that time off? Because true interventions do not take away from their core instructional learning time. So it has to be in addition. And the middle school team has thought of many different models, but currently for literacy, for example, they are pulling them out of like a learning center, which is a time that isn't dedicated to like PE or art or music or tech ed, or one of the core academic areas. So many times when students are in intervention, we try to schedule them so that they're not missing something else. But it does limit them in some of the choices that students have access to.
So when the middle school administrators came to us, what they were asking to do was to increase, to make the number of periods in literacy the same from 7th to 8th grade. Was that what they were asking to do?
Yes.
I still don't like it. So I just think that, you can't just beat your head against the wall. You got to do a better job downstream so we can keep offering more opportunities for kids to enrich their learning activity. But we'll see how it comes out when the study comes through.
So interwoven throughout our 4K and 8th grade offerings is the opportunity to become bilingual, biliterate, and culturally competent, not only here in our neck of the woods, but across the globe. And so we offer a dual language program. Everything that happens in dual language happens in English and in Spanish, which requires a lot of curriculum heavy lifting in the Spanish development. So at the 4K range, as you are aware, we have our young students coming in, and they experience 100% Spanish immersion in the 4K. Right now in the school district of Waukesha, a little more than 1 out of every 10 students is participating in dual language. So it's quite a substantial amount of students. Most of those students start in kindergarten, not in 4K. In kindergarten, the program is 90% Spanish, 10% English, and you'll see from the table that we have, the Spanish instruction is in literacy, math, and this year social studies, and then the English instruction has been in science this past year, which is different than previous years. We're just taking a break with the social studies until we develop new curriculum. In grades 2 and 3, it's about 70% Spanish, 30% English. So there are paired literacy units, which means students have the opportunity to read, write, listen, and speak in both Spanish and English every day. But the comprehensive literacy block is a shared time whereby every other unit is in English and in Spanish. Science is always in Spanish, and then math is in Spanish in 2nd and 3rd grade. The literacy in English also occurs in 2nd and 3rd grade, and social studies is in English in 2nd and 3rd grade. 4th through 7th grade has the same exact model. It's a 50-50 model, meaning that half of their content is in Spanish and half of their content is in English. You can see the continuity of literacy in Spanish as well as science in Spanish. And then in English, there is paired literacy in English as well as social studies and math. At the 8th grade level, we take a secondary version or a secondary definition of dual language, which requires us to choose one daily content area in Spanish, and that content area is science, which continues up into the high school. And then pre-AP Spanish literature is taught in 8th grade, and then all of their other content area is in English. I want to stress to you the content is really important, that students learn language through content, and so we've had coveted time for science and social studies instruction for several years. And that we're excited to be able to offer this opportunity for our students and for the many, many students who open and enroll into our district to take advantage of this really unique opportunity.
So at the elementary level, we have our specials time. We offer art, music, and physical education. Students will visit those classes 2 times a week in 40-minute blocks. When it comes to PE, our required state time is 90 minutes weekly. The classroom teachers, on a day when the students are not visiting physical education, they have one other day during the week that they have 10 minutes of structured physical education activity. So a team of our physical education activities, also through Playworks, teachers are more equipped to do those activities as well.
And then, excuse me, and then at the elective options at middle school level, again, take on the form of the secondary structure. So we have two periods a day where students have options to choose amongst the different department areas. So we have art, music, physical education, but now we introduce business, family and consumer science, world language, tech ed, and AVID. DPI requirements, rules, and state statutes say that art and music must be taken at least once in 6th through 8th grade, so at the middle levels. So every student has at least one art and one music class. Physical education must be taken once every year during their 3 years in middle school for a total of a semester, similar to what high school is. And then they must have, as the wording is, access, which really means choice. They have to have the options to be able to take that, and that's where the choice comes in at the middle level. So here's where students start to make those decisions in terms of what options they want to take advantage of.
The framework that we use, the language foundation that includes things such as shared reading, interactive writing. Grammar and word work serves as the foundation. Then they move into language workshop, which gets into the listening and the speaking and how you have conversations about what you're reading and experiencing and taking in. Incorporated and connected to that is reading workshop, our content workshop, which is our sciences and our social studies, and then writing workshop. So all of these work together to help build that foundation for our students. In K-8, our reading and language workshops are developed through unit themes around topics such as community, identity, relationships, problem solving, to name a few. And then through that, we look at what are the reading text types that we need our students to become more sophisticated learners. And so we have informational text types such as biographies, narrative nonfiction, and then we also have narrative text such as historical fiction, modern fantasy, poetry. And this is where we really try to select texts that are rich and bring in that content also of social studies and science, because in order for students to develop reading skills, they have to have content to be able to Then in writing workshop, we have the same units, so the themes are the same, but then students are exposed to the 3 different types of writing of narrative, expository, also called informational, and then opinion, argumentative. And then we have time where students are explicitly taught and practice and studying how grammar is used in literature and how they can then apply that into their own writing, as well as word study, phonics, and how that is applied in reading and all right, then we have math. Once again, our math are in units. We have a different amount of units per grade level. That is based on the Wisconsin academic standards and how those are developed and giving students reps. So if you can see in kindergarten, an area such as counting and cardinality, that unit comes up, that topic repeats itself 4 times, where students were making sure that they have time that they spiral back again, but then continue to add on as their number sense becomes more sophisticated and they're ready to build on. So you'll see in kindergarten all the way through 5th grade the varying units that students have the opportunities to learn and engage in practice. Elementary science. Once again, we have units based on the standards. We have 3 units for every grade level, a unit that happens per trimester.
When we shift into middle school, when you take a look, we have 6 units in our literacy, 6 units per year in literacy, and as you can see, we've taken the idea of what are the different genres that they're exposed to. You'll notice that we hit all of the different pieces that Melissa had talked about in an overview of CLM, and that we actually loop back around so that it spirals and students are able to hit at deeper levels, again incorporating opportunities for students to explore the knowledge that they want to build upon, so that includes science and social studies. In social studies, you'll notice that in 6th through 8th grade, we really kind of build upon different skills, where 6th grade talks a lot about culture and base skills around geography and history and ancient history. Then in 7th grade, we focus again on geography and then build into a more world history perspective. And then in 8th grade, we end with again, looping back to ancient civilization, but then moving into a U.S. history base, which then sets them up for social studies where it spirals back around. In science and in math, we have in science 4 units in a year, so each unit is approximately a quarter. And again, hitting all of our next gen science standards, ensuring that we cover each of the areas. You'll notice that it takes more themes. These themes are generated from the next gen science standards so that they incorporate both the physical and biological sciences as well as earth science in there. So students get a good, comprehensive overview of science in preparation to their transition to high school. And then in mathematics, again, six units in each of the 3 years, and very much like what Melissa talked about in elementary school, you'll see that topics spiral around. What you'll notice in here is that the topics are more, they're broader topics, because at this point they're incorporating the foundational skills that they had gained in K5 and bringing those in and getting them ready to transition into high school where they're getting into algebra.
On the math, we've recently had the sessions where we've discussed the new way of delivering. I'm not going to use the word new. The revised way of delivering our math, rather than pieces like this, but a bit more like. Is that what you're trying to build into this right here?
This actually is an integrated format. So from elementary through middle school, it is actually
integrated. That's what it looks like.
Format. Yep. Yeah. And so this is now continuing that transition with high school Vision 2020 is to continue that. In fact, when we do the work, the 8th grade standards there encompass about 60% of what students will see again in Algebra 1 in our traditional Algebra 1 standards, if you look at them side by side.
Thank you.
You're aging yourself, Mr. Baumgart. You're aging yourself when you say you don't want to use new math.
I didn't like the word new.
I'll also say, you know, and also, not in defense of our people here, but in defense of the people like them in the past, whatever new math was, it was massively successful because it created the digital world we have today.
Okay.
So.
If you say so.
All right, and I won't go too deep because you already heard a wonderful explanation of the great things that we have now happening for our learners with social emotional learning. The first is that universal second step that is taking place. So in 4K, there are 5 units. you will see once again that theme spiraling as they go through the grades. So in K3, from 4K, they have a unit on skills for learning, empathy, social emotional management, and then problem solving. And then we get to 4th and 5th grade, empathy, social emotional management, problem solving, and then it moves up into our middle schools 6, 8, which excitingly began this year as well as 4K. Very nice continuum of learning across our.
Okay, and then this is me. You should be familiar with a few of these, but we wanted to also preview for you the upgrades coming. So you'll continue to see communication from us around social studies. As you know, that's the new standards are being adopted. We're in year 2 with that. So that's a huge undertaking, K-12. So you'll be hearing updates around that. Handwriting without tears at the kindergarten level. We have 4K this year. We're rolling up to kindergarten next year. Word study in grades K-5. And then the math adoption, as we've mentioned, the Vision 2020, that high school Vision 2020, with then looking down in the next year, previewing the 6-8, just starting to review what that could look like. So that'll be kind of the next 2 years worth of work that'll continue to come to your attention.
Mr. Como.
Thank you, Mr. Dietz. I did not see in social studies the topic of religion. Do we cover that in our middle schools anymore? In our high school levels?
Not explicitly in terms of a unit unto itself, but like in world history, when we talk about the history across that, religion does come up as themes across that, but it's not a specific topic unto itself.
Anything else?
I would
Mr.
just
Baumgart.
add, seeing this after a long time of waiting for something as well explained as it is here, I appreciate this.
Nice, very thorough, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add it's a very good format, and it was very informative, and it allowed me to ask a lot of questions I probably shouldn't have asked, but.
Melissa, could you tell me where we are with handwriting? Because that's back in the news now. Briefly.
We are moving from, we've been in 2 years of handwriting without tears at 4K, and we're moving to handwriting without tears in kindergarten.
Okay.
What is handwriting without tears?
Well, it means you don't cry when you're doing it.
I get that.
No, it really works on a lot of the fine motor pieces. And
But the answer that's not being asked, the question that's not being asked is cursive included in this?
no, not at kindergarten.
Oh, I didn't expect that.
Not,
Ever.
Third grade. Not yet explicitly as a curriculum. You will see teachers working with students on cursive, but we are not to the point yet that we're bringing in the explicit curriculum to help teach that yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Good stuff.
Amanda?
Thank you very
Ms.
much for
Roddy.
this. I did ask for this. I had some conversation with parents on some advisory committees that I sit on at our schools, and it all stemmed from the middle school discussions that we had the last few months about changing their program and stuff. And the parents were saying, well, the question's always asked, are the middle school students being prepared to go into high school? Well, these parents started asking at the middle school level, were our children fully prepared coming out of elementary? So that's kind of where this topic had come from and where the request came. So thank you. So now I can take this and share this at the advisory committee. So appreciate that.
Very good. Anything else? Sounds good. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here, and we look forward to having you back. I'm sure you'll be here.
That's what you asked
Please.
for.
Okay, we don't have any discussion items this evening. At this time, I'd be looking for Anything from any committee members for other business for future committee meetings?
And this is where I just want to interject, give you a preview. I'm going to start doing this, give you a preview for February. Hire will be here to talk about their Avid Elementary implementation. We will have a topic around family engagement, around students with IEPs. Patty Hovell will be here for that. We'll give you a Math Vision Update 2020 on just resources and timeline implementation. And then Whittier will be here again, but first time with the principal, Brandy Hart, to give you an AGR grant update. So that she'll be first time in front of the board next month with that.
Will be nice.
And then anything else from any other committee members? Okay, sounds good. Look forward to February. With that, our meeting is adjourned. Special thank you to any staff members that were with us tonight, as well as administration that were with us this evening. I do appreciate your attendance at these meetings, and thank you very much for being here. Our next Teaching and Learning Committee meeting will be Tuesday, February 4th, here in the boardroom at 6 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.